Later on today, coming up at 2 o'clock, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, will release its World Economic Outlook in what may well be a bloodbath for Britain's rating. And of course that has an effect on whether other countries can buy into the bonds that the government issues, which is how they raise money by going further into debt. Basically they borrow money and people pay money for bonds, and the higher the price of the bond, obviously the more money that is actually owed. The UK's economic forecast could get revised if the UK is downgraded. Ryan, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to see you. I hope you had a nice Easter. Rachel Reeves off to Washington today. Not sure who she's going to be meeting with. No suggestion, I think, that she's meeting with Donald Trump, and I don't think she's travelling with any media. So how long is she going there for? What does she hope to achieve?
Yeah, she's going to be there for a few days this week. And I think one of the key things to watch out for, particularly won't be what happens at the centre of the IMF, but what happens on the sidelines, on the fringes of this meeting, when she gets some one-on-one time with the US administration and her US counterpart, Scott Bessent. Because I think that's going to be really, really important to show the direction of travel of where we are with this trade deal. She can actually put a lot, as much pressure she can do on Scott Bessent, and just to try and get this trade deal over the way, because those tariffs are continuing. We are paying 10% tariffs on all goods going to America. There's 25% tariffs on cars, steel, aluminium, and what Keir Starmer's got to do, what Rachel Reeves has got to do every time they speak to their counterparts, is just try and beat the drum and try and mitigate those tariffs as much as possible. But it's going to be, this is a big sort of showpiece event. It was in the diary. It's always in the diary. It's their spring forum at the IMF. But it's what happens around the fringes, and we'll see if there's been any success on that towards the end of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I presume this means that Jonathan Reynolds, who's up to now been conducting these particular conversations with the trade ambassadors and all the rest of it in the US, is too busy now running British Steel, is he?
Well, that's a good point, Mike. I think Jonathan Reynolds will be, I wouldn't say quite maybe at the front and centre of the US talks, but he will be there, and it wouldn't surprise me if he makes his own visit to America in the coming weeks. Don't forget, of course, we had those White House officials last week who said that this trade deal or this pact or this narrow agreement could be agreed within 2 to 3 weeks' time. So I feel like that's the type of time frame we're looking at, and we will be there in that first tranche of countries who get a deal, the likes of Japan or Australia, those key allies who Trump wants to help out. I say help out. He still hit us with big heavies, but it will try and mitigate and soften the blow slightly.
Yes, and I mean, the sort of the economy is not showing any great signs of improvement, is it? I mean, every indicator is much of a muchness. It's either up sort of 0.01 or down 0.01 or generally flat. You know, the inflation figures came out recently, I think it was last week, and we were all laughing at them here, because in the end everybody who's out there and trying to buy things in the big wide world knows that the price of everything is going up at a much greater rate than 2.6%. You know, your water bill's going up by sometimes 50% or 55%. Your electricity bill's going up by another couple of £100 a year. You know that your council tax is up. You know that every time you go to the supermarket, the prices are much more than they were just last week. So it's kind of almost as though nobody really believes them, and that was certainly the sense that I got from our audience, that they don't really believe that the economy is in good shape. It doesn't matter what Rachel Reeves says about, you know, we're going steady and, you know, we're doing the right things and it shows that our plan for change is working. It clearly isn't.
Yeah, no, exactly. And this is the big measure that this Labour government wants to judge themselves by in 3 or 4 years' time. It's how people feel. Do they feel wealthier? Do they feel like they have fun money to go and spend at the pub or in a restaurant at the end of the week or the end of the month? And that's one of the things they'll be judged by. But as you say, we had awful April, all these bills going up and people really feeling it in the pocket. And even though inflation went down slightly just a few weeks ago, we expect it to go back up to maybe 3.6, 3.7%. So it will feel more difficult for people. But I think one thing to watch out for these IMF figures today is just that downgrade, that knock-on effect from those Trump tariffs. They'll have taken all that into consideration. You look at the Bank of England halving sort of growth forecasts for this year. Most other bodies doing the same. So it was interesting, though, at the spring statement, Rachel Reeves said, the economy will take a hit this year, but the OBR, that independent watchdog, said that for the rest of the years, there will be an increase. But let's just watch and see. And it's how people feel, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, if they have any money left in their pockets.
I mean, the big story that's obviously been occupying us here on this show since last Wednesday has been the ruling by the Supreme Court and Keir Starmer's basic silence over it. I can't remember if you and I spoke at the end of last week, but I was saying on Wednesday and Thursday, surely now is the time for Keir Starmer to come out and make a statement about this and actually say, I totally agree with the Supreme Court's ruling. A woman can only be a woman if she was biologically born a woman, and a trans woman is not a woman, because he said so many things to the contrary over the period of time that you would think this would be a moment of clarity for him. And as we played earlier, he's such a stickler for the law, you'd think he would want to point out that he was going to continue to be a stickler for the law and abide by the rule of law. But instead of that, he's causing an awful lot of disquiet, I would say, around the country by saying nothing.
Yeah, I think MPs, ministers are back off their Easter recess today, and I think we'll see Keir Starmer out and about this morning, and I'm sure he will get asked about that, and he will, be very, very clear about that Supreme Court ruling. And I think I think he'll be very, very clear. And I think one thing that this Supreme Court ruling actually does is it solves a whole lot of problems. It was very, very clear. And I think he will just stick to the line and try and hope this story passes.
But why hasn't he done it? Why hasn't he done it already? I mean, we saw over the weekend that several members of his own cabinet are actually, exchanging WhatsApp messages about how they can get around it. We know that, for example, the NHS is looking to make exceptions, particularly in London hospitals and London hospital trusts, saying that, we're not going to follow the guidance at all. We're not going to follow the law. So, I mean, he's got a problem with it, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, he does. He does on one front. Now, I think he has the slight excuse that he was away last week. However, it wouldn't have made much, or if Downing Street had put out a tweet just clarifying his position, right. I think that probably would have been the sensible thing to do. We weren't expecting him to break away from the Sun Lounger or whatever, but I don't think it would have taken too much for him to just to clarify the government's position. Lots of other ministers were very, very clear about it. Others weren't. But I think maybe last week was such a monumentous outcome, decision, ruling, that it probably wouldn't have taken too much. But I think we'll get some clarity on his position.
Well, Labour ministers were very much under the cosh last week because they pretended, Bridget Phillips and amongst them, that they'd always been in favour of single-sex spaces, defending single-sex spaces for women, which was clearly untrue. It was a lie, because we all found plenty of quotes from all sorts of people, including David Lammy and others, who said that they didn't believe that trans women should be excluded from single-sex spaces for women. They thought they should be basically included. We've got loads and loads of quotes from Keir Starmer saying trans rights are human rights and all of that. And he managed to find time to go to a church on Sunday to hang about with some children and look at some Easter eggs. He then was able to make a statement about the Pope yesterday, but still nothing on this.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the reasons is that he has got himself into a muddle. You look at over what he said over the last 2 or 3 years. It's going to take, and again, he'll probably clarify his position this morning. He's been on a bit of a journey when it comes to the equality issue. So I actually think the Supreme Court ruling gets him out of a pretty big hole, actually. So let's just see what he's got to say this morning.
I don't share your optimism, but I'll be very happy to be proved wrong. I suspect he's going to try and fudge it because he's frightened of the trans protests. I mean, they're saying after the big protest in London on Saturday that they're going to spread these protests nationwide. And again, he can't ignore that, can he?
No, and I was speaking to people in the Department for Health last week, and they were very, very clear with the NHS and what they should be doing in the coming weeks and months. They need to get their guidance up to date. And it wasn't just they need to observe this and try and get things up to speed. They have to comply with it very, wholeheartedly. So I think that is where the government is, and that is where the government line is. So, but let's just wait and see what he has to say this morning.
And of course, he's also got a problem with the law on the basis of the fact that some of these trans activists are now being sought by the police because they committed acts of vandalism over the weekend, making statues, defacing statues and threatening to kill people, believe it or not, incredibly, kill J.K. Rowling. Accusations of two-tier policing once again about Starmer because they haven't been arrested, they haven't been locked up.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, there were several hundred people on these protests over the weekend, and you just wonder whether the police were holding off slightly for whatever reason. I'm sure that the public will expect them to be going through all that CCTV, trying to launch their investigation to find out who actually did this. And I hear that, and I read that there's actually going to be several more protests this coming weekend, and I think the public will expect them to take a harsher stance on the public.
Well, if you're holding up a sign, if you're holding up a sign that says "Kill J.K. Rowling," and the only good turf is a dead turf with a picture of somebody hanging from a hangman's noose, I mean, how is that any different from what Lucy Connolly did?
Yeah, no, I think that's where the police will have to make sure they're more steadfast in their actions this weekend. You cannot be holding signs like that up, whoever you're writing about. So, and I expect the politicians to get involved this week as well. I'm not sure if they expected so many people to be on these protests at the weekend, but I think the police will have to actually take note and realise there'll be maybe several more thousand people than they expected.
Yeah. And as far as the holiday goes, does anybody know where he went yet? Because it was all a bit of a secret, wasn't it?
I think we got the impression that it was Southern Europe. Now, when we see him this morning, we'll work out whether he has a tan or not. So right. I think that's going to be the biggest clue. I don't know if it was skiing. I think it was somewhere hot, but let's just wait and see.
But the baffling thing for me is that Downing Street said he flew a commercial flight to wherever it was he went, and nobody saw him, apparently. I mean, that's pretty unusual, isn't it?
Yeah, you also often find when politicians, members of the royal family go on commercial flights, budget airlines, there's always someone who takes a picture. It wasn't that long ago where Sir Keir Starmer was on holiday. He went to Madeira, and you had him and his family queuing up for this toboggan ride.
You mean jumping the queue for the toboggan ride?
Yeah. And a member of the public got a picture of them.
And also, we've all been on EasyJet flights. You can't hide on an EasyJet flight. It's not like you can come in a different entrance and go into first class. You're either on the plane or you're not.
Yeah, there's always someone there to take a picture. So it's
isn't that a bit odd then that nobody got one, or nobody reported that they saw him on the plane?
Yeah, it is, yes. I don't know how I imagine he went. If he went commercial, it just unless he got taken onto the plane at the very, very last minute and sat at the front.
Yeah, but even then,
a little bit easier.
But you can't. There's no hiding place on EasyJet or Ryanair. There isn't. I suspect. Go on.
The only thing I can put it down to, he was staying somewhere very privately. Maybe there's a holiday villa, or a family member has got a villa, and he just didn't need to go walking around into towns, or it's a very secluded place. That's the only thing I can put it down to.
Yeah, I'm just surprised nobody saw him on the way there. Maybe he went in a car, maybe he went to part of France. I just don't know. Yeah. But I mean, I think it's worth asking him. I mean, I'm not asking you what to do, how to do your job, but you know what I mean.
There'll be a big lobby briefing this morning, so we'll be asking the questions to number 10 this morning.
Well, here's one for you, because he keeps saying it, and we're going to play a little clip in a minute. Trans rights are human rights. That's what he used to say quite often, and I wonder if he still believes that that's true.
Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights, and I support the right to self-identification. I think we need to respect the right to self-identify, and we're committed to updating the GRA to introduce self-declaration for trans people.
We don't think that self-identification is the right way forward.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right.
Is it right Or is it wrong for Rosie Duffield to say only women have a cervix?
Well, look, biologically, she, of course, is right about
So
that. Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights. We've also got to stand up here for trans rights and take that fight on.
That a transgender woman is a woman and should be allowed on a female ward. What if one of them was sitting here and said that to you, what would be your response?
Well, I disagree. I disagree.
Anyway, so there we are. So Ryan, you got your work cut out there, because you take your pick. Once he said trans rights are human rights, he said it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and then he said, but trans women shouldn't be allowed on female wards.
Yeah, that's why I come back to my point of why I think it's just very easy for him to sit behind that Supreme Court ruling last week. It just gives him clarity. It was very, very clear. And I think it just gives him the perfect opportunity to take that on board, make sure public institutions abide by that, and he can try and move on and just forget about all that confusion and that excruciating commentary we just heard there. He'll be grateful, I think, in some ways for that ruling.
Yeah, well, I should look forward to your reports tomorrow in The Sun from what he says today. Thank you very much indeed. Ryan Sabey, Deputy Political Editor there. He's got his work cut out trying to get a statement out of Starmer.